Let me ask you something important today with better opportunity. A sign, the right time. Friend, if you're waiting, then you'll just keep waiting. Life does not reward those who wait. It rewards those who act. Waiting is not preparation. It's often procrastination disguised in polite language. You don't need perfect timing. You need focused motion. Some people spend years on the sidelines rehearsing, doubting, hesitating, and then they wonder why the race passed them by. Opportunity doesn't shout. It whispers. And the truth is, opportunity is almost always dressed in work clothes. If you wait until you feel ready, you'll never begin. The best time to move was yesterday. The second best time, right now. Don't misunderstand, patience has its place. But the kind of waiting most people do is not patience. It's delay, and delay has a cost. You don't get time back. You don't get youth back. You don't get the energy of today again tomorrow. The winners in life are not those with the most talent, but those with the most initiative. They take the shot, even if it's not perfect. They build with what they have, not what they wish they had. While others are still asking, what if? They're already saying, what's next? So stop waiting. Waiting keeps you broke. Waiting keeps you stuck. Waiting keeps you small. Decide. Move. Learn on the go. Life responds to action. The soil responds when you plant. The harvest shows up after the work is done. If you want momentum, take a step. If you want change, start the shift. If you want results, make the move. Waiting won't do it. Action will. Waiting rarely creates opportunity. Action does. Let that settle in. Because too many people are sitting on the sidelines of life, hoping the game will change just because they're watching. But the truth is, the game only changes when you step onto the field. Opportunity is not something that falls out of the sky and lands in your lap. It's something you create by motion, by decision, by the willingness to act, even if you're unsure, even if you're afraid. You can't steer a parked car. And you can't build a future while standing still. People love to say they're waiting, waiting for clarity, waiting for the right season, waiting for a sign. But often what they're really doing is avoiding the discomfort of movement. They want the reward without the risk, the fruit without the planning, the success without the schedule. But life just doesn't work that way. Movement is what opens doors. It's not waiting that gets you there. It's working. You don't stumble across opportunity by sitting in your chair thinking about it. You find opportunity when you knock on 100 doors, when you make the calls, when you show up early and stay late, when you do the work others won't do. And it's funny, when you do all that, people start calling you lucky. But what they don't see is the sweat and the hours behind the so-called luck. What they call coincidence is usually just consistency. The person who acts will always have a better shot than the one who waits. Not because they're more gifted, not because they're more educated, but because they decided to move. It's the movement that builds momentum. And momentum changes everything. You make a call today, you get a response tomorrow. You plant a seed today, you get a harvest in the next season. But if you keep the seed in your pocket waiting for the perfect weather, you miss the season entirely. Think of it this way, opportunity is like a train that doesn't stop. It slows down at the station, but it doesn't wait forever. If you don't step on it, it moves on. And there will be others who take that seat, others who take that risk. Don't be the one left standing on the platform wondering what could have been. Be the one who stepped up, even if you weren't ready. Because nobody ever really feels ready. That's the illusion. Readiness is a myth. Discipline is what matters. You've got to act in faith, not blind faith, but action based on belief that something greater is possible, that your effort isn't wasted, that small steps count. Because they do. Small steps compound. And over time, they lead you to places waiting never could. You can wait for confidence, but it's action that builds confidence. You can wait for resources, but action often attracts resources. You can wait for support, but when you move, the right people tend to show up. Not always immediately, but your motion has a way of drawing others towards you. So don't mistake reflection for hesitation. Think things through, yes, but don't stay stuck in the planning room forever. Plans are important, but progress is better. Because progress teaches you what planning never could. You learn by doing, you grow by going, you adjust along the way. Every successful person you admire, no matter the field, has one thing in common: they moved. Maybe not with full certainty, maybe not with every answer, but they took the step. They understood that if you wait for everything to be lined up perfectly, you'll be stuck forever. Life rewards the brave, the diligent, the consistent, not the passive. So here's the question: what are you waiting for? Another month, another year, a little more approval, a little more time. The truth is, time is passing whether you act or not. The clock doesn't pause while you make up your mind. Every day you wait is a day you don't get back. So decide, step, move, act. Because opportunity is rarely something you find. It's something you create. And the only way to create it is to stop waiting and start doing. Delaying decisions is the fastest way to miss your moment. That's a hard truth, but one worth hearing, especially in a world where people often confuse indecision with wisdom. Now, don't get me wrong. Careful thinking has its place. But there's a big difference between thoughtful planning and endless hesitation. One builds a future. The other kills it. Every great opportunity has a window. And that window doesn't stay open forever. Life moves. Markets shift. People change. What's here today may not be here tomorrow. The door you're staring at now may not swing open next week. And by the time you're finally ready, the moment has already passed. Success doesn't wait for those still weighing the pros and cons 100 times. It moves with those who have trained their instincts, gathered enough information to act, and then, most importantly, decided. Because action is the bridge between potential and progress. And decisions are the bricks on that bridge. You've probably seen it happen. Someone with talent, intelligence, even resources, but they're stuck. Why? Not because they lack opportunity, because they won't decide. Should they go left or right? Should they start or stop? Should they risk or retreat? And while they're still asking, someone else already acted, and now they're ahead. The world doesn't stop to make sure you're comfortable. The window doesn't wait for your self-doubt to settle. If you delay too long, you don't just lose time, you lose momentum. And once momentum slips, it's not easy to get it back. Energy wasted in hesitation rarely fuels the next phase of your journey. You've got to trust that movement is better than stillness, even when the path isn't perfectly clear. There's wisdom in a fast yes or a clear no. Indecision, on the other hand, drains you. It eats away at your confidence. The more you hesitate, the more fear grows. And the more fear grows, the harder it becomes to act. Decisions don't need to be perfect. They need to be made. Because progress doesn't come from perfection. It comes from movement. If you decide wrong, you can adjust. If you act and fail, you can learn. But if you delay, if you wait until all the stars align, you risk missing the season entirely. Life rewards boldness. It responds to people who move with urgency, not recklessness, but purpose. And urgency doesn't mean rushing without thought. It means you recognize that time is valuable, that this moment right now may be your window. And if you don't move through it, someone else will. You don't want to live in the land of what if. That's the place where regrets grow. That's where people sit years later, wondering why they didn't say yes, why they didn't take the shot, why they didn't step forward when their heart said go. And often the answer is simple: they delayed. They didn't lack the ability. They lacked the decision. And here's something most people don't realize: the longer you delay, the heavier the decision becomes. It's like carrying a small rock around, refusing to set it down. Day after day, it gets heavier. Not because it changed, but because you're wearing out. Delay multiplies stress, not clarity. You can think yourself right into paralysis. But life doesn't get better by overthinking. It gets better by stepping forward. Decisions lead to doors, and doors lead to destinations. But you can't walk through any door if you never decide which one to open. So here's the challenge: decide. Take the job or don't. Start the business or don't. Make the call or don't. But stop living in limbo. Limbo is exhausting. Life is built by choices, not by chances. Delaying doesn't make things easier. It just spreads the discomfort over a longer period. Decide quickly, adjust slowly. Trust that you'll figure it out, because more often than not, the breakthrough is on the other side of your choice, not your delay. So don't wait for the perfect moment. Make the moment perfect by deciding. Because if you keep putting it off, the moment you've been waiting for might just pass you by. You don't have to be perfect to get started, but you do have to start to get better. That's one of life's most practical truths, and one that far too many people ignore. Perfection is often the enemy of progress. It disguises itself as high standards, but in reality, it's just fear wearing a nice suit. People say, "I'm not ready yet." What they usually mean is, "I'm afraid I'll mess it up." And so they sit, and they plan, and they wait, but they never build, because they think that unless everything's polished and perfect, they have no business beginning. But here's the truth: nobody starts at the top. Nobody walks onto the stage for the first time with flawless delivery. Nobody launches a business with all the answers. Every master was once a beginner. Every expert was once awkward. Every leader once stumbled through their first few steps. That's just how growth works. You grow by going. You improve by trying. You get better by doing. The problem is that we often compare our behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel. We look at people who've been building for years and say, "I could never be that good." But we forget they weren't that good when they started. They were raw. They were messy. They were unsure. But they started anyway. And that's the dividing line: those who start and those who stall. The ones who wait for perfect conditions rarely leave the shore. But those who set sail, even with holes in their sails, learn how to patch the boat along the way. They figure it out. They adjust course. They build the muscle of resilience. And eventually they get where they were meant to go. You see, life responds to effort. It responds to initiative. It rewards the person who shows up consistently, even imperfectly. You don't get better at speaking by reading about it. You get better by standing up and speaking. You don't get better at business by thinking about the perfect plan. You get better by launching, failing, learning, tweaking, and continuing. There's a certain power in just starting. It sends a message to yourself, to others, to the world, that you're serious, that you're willing to risk falling in order to learn to walk, that you don't expect perfection, but you do expect progress. And progress doesn't require talent. It requires movement. That's what people forget. You don't have to be the best right now. You just have to be in motion. One step leads to another. And with every step, you get a little stronger, a little wiser, a little better. But if you never take the first step, nothing changes. Dreams stay dreams. Goals stay scribbled in journals. Ideas stay in your head. That book doesn't get written. That business doesn't get launched. That habit doesn't get built, because you're still waiting to feel perfect, to be perfect, to know everything. Let go of that. The sooner you embrace imperfection, the faster you grow. Because once you stop trying to get it all right, you're free to actually try. And trying, that's where all the learning happens. That's where the transformation begins. Think of it like this: you don't get fit by waiting to feel strong. You get strong by showing up when you're weak. You don't become confident by waiting until you're fearless. You build confidence by acting even when you're nervous. Start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can. That's the formula. Not someday. Not when the timing's better. Not when you have all the answers now. This moment, this is the doorway. You won't be perfect on day one. That's okay. But if you show up on day 1 and day 2 and day 10, suddenly you're not the same person anymore. You've grown. You've built something. You've moved. So stop holding back. Stop telling yourself you need to be ready. Readiness is a decision, not a feeling. Start where you are. Because you don't have to be perfect to get started, but you do have to start to get better. And better is waiting on the other side of action. The clock doesn't wait for your confidence to catch up. Time keeps ticking, whether you believe in yourself or not. That's the reality. You can be standing still, unsure of your next move, doubting your abilities, wrestling with fear, but the clock doesn't stop out of sympathy. It just keeps moving forward, and with every tick, opportunity either gets closer or slips further away. A lot of people are waiting to feel more confident before they act. They say things like, "I'll speak up when I feel ready," or "I'll start that business once I'm sure I won't fail." But here's the secret: confidence doesn't come first. Action does. You don't feel brave and then do the hard thing. You do the hard thing and the bravery follows. Confidence is built through motion, not contemplation. It's earned, not granted. You gain it by doing, by risking, by stretching beyond your current comfort zone. Every time you act, even when you're afraid, even when you're unsure, you're stacking small victories that tell your mind, "I can do this." That's how belief is formed, by collecting proof, not waiting for permission. You can't let fear make your schedule. If you wait to feel completely secure, completely fearless, completely sure, you'll be waiting the rest of your life. Time won't stop and say, "Okay, now they're ready." No, life rewards those who move while they're still unsure, while their hands shake, while their voice trembles. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to move forward in spite of it. Think about how many moments have passed you by simply because you were waiting to feel different. Opportunities you saw but didn't grab. Doors that were open but you hesitated to walk through. Not because you weren't capable, but because you didn't feel confident. And that feeling, the lack of confidence, tricked you into doing nothing. Here's the truth: feelings are unreliable travel guides. They're unstable, they shift with your environment, your sleep, your past, your mood. But action is solid. It's a foundation. If you do what needs to be done, regardless of how you feel, you start changing the script. You teach yourself that emotions don't get the final say. The person who moves without confidence grows faster than the one who waits for it. That's why some people who seem less prepared often outpace those with more talent. They weren't necessarily better. They were just willing to move when others were still getting ready. The clock gave them the same time, but they used it. They didn't waste it waiting for their inner voice to speak sweet things. They made their move, and their inner voice caught up later. Every moment of hesitation cost you something. It cost you momentum. It cost you learning. It cost you time. The window of opportunity isn't open forever. You may think you have more time, but sometimes the only thing separating success from regret is 5 seconds of boldness. 5 seconds of saying yes when everything in you is screaming no. 5 seconds of courage can shift your whole direction. Let the calendar be your teacher. The date changes whether you act or not. That means you can either move into your future or let the future move past you. There is no pause button. There's no rewind. Today will never come back, and tomorrow isn't guaranteed. So what do? You act before you feel ready. You make the call. You send the email. You speak up. You apply. You create. You build. Not because you're overflowing with confidence, but because you're done letting time slip through your fingers. And here's the twist. When you act without confidence, you grow faster. You get stronger, because now you're learning in real time. You're not just studying success, you're stepping into it. That kind of growth doesn't come from waiting. It comes from doing. So let others wait for perfect timing, for perfect emotions, for perfect belief. You take the imperfect action. You show up even when you're unsure. You move while your legs are shaking. Because the clock doesn't wait for your confidence to catch up. And neither should you. Growth doesn't happen in the waiting room. It happens in the field. That's not just a catchy phrase. It's a principle that separates the ones who move from the ones who merely talk. You can sit and plan and read and dream, but until you step into the field, into the mess, the work, the risk, nothing changes. Think about a seed. You can hold it in your hand for years. You can admire it, protect it, keep it safe. But it will never grow until it's buried in the soil. Until it faces the sun, the rain, the wind, it remains exactly what it is, potential. And potential doesn't feed anyone. It doesn't change lives. It doesn't build legacies. Only planted seeds grow. A lot of people are sitting in the waiting room of life. They're waiting for the perfect opportunity, the ideal conditions, the right level of motivation. They say, when I feel ready, I'll start. Or, when I know everything, I'll make a move. But what they don't realize is this: the waiting room is not designed for growth. It's a place to pause. And too many are turning it into a permanent residence. You don't get stronger just by thinking about lifting weights. You don't get smarter just by staring at books. You don't become a leader by sitting in your living room imagining speeches. You grow by doing, by sweating, by stumbling, by learning firsthand. And the field isn't comfortable. It never is. It's unpredictable. It tests your resolve. It exposes your weaknesses. But it also reveals your strength. It shows you what you're made of. And that kind of education, the kind you get in the dirt, in the pressure, in the middle of the action, you can't find it in the waiting room. You'll never learn to swim by reading about it. At some point, you've got to jump in the water. You've got to feel it. You've got to experience resistance. That's how growth works. It demands participation, not just observation. People often confuse preparation with progress. Preparation is important, but it has a limit. There comes a moment when you've studied enough, planned enough, watched enough videos, read enough books. Now it's time to go. It's time to act. Because until you do, you're not actually growing. You're just accumulating information. There's a difference between being ready and being willing. You may never feel fully ready. That's normal. But if you're willing, you can grow. If you're willing to step out with what you've got, willing to take the first step even without full certainty, that's when doors open. That's when opportunities find you. Not while you're sitting and waiting, but while you're moving. In the field, you get feedback, real feedback. You find out what works and what doesn't. You meet people who challenge you, who sharpen you. You learn to solve problems that never show up in theory. And those lessons, they stay with you because they're earned. They're lived. Growth is not glamorous. It's often uncomfortable. But it's real. It builds something in you that nothing else can. It gives you confidence that comes from experience, not opinion. And over time, the field that once scared you becomes familiar. You get better. You get stronger. You start to thrive. Meanwhile, the waiting room stays the same. The walls don't change. The chair doesn't get warmer. The view doesn't improve. It's safe, but it's silent, but it's empty. And if you stay there too long, you start to shrink, not grow. So the question is, are you ready to leave the waiting room? Are you ready to step into the field? It might be messy. It might be challenging, but it's where life is happening. It's where your story unfolds. It's where the real you is shaped, not by what you think, but by what you do. You won't grow by playing it safe. You won't grow by standing still. You grow when you risk, when you try, when you fail forward, when you move even when you're unsure. Because growth doesn't happen in the waiting room. It happens in the field, and the field is calling.